Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just a few seconds before we get started. Let people come in. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Southeast New England Program Network, welcome to our webinar titled Taking a Watershed Approach to Aging Dams and Competing Priorities at Merrill Ponds, featuring SNP Network partner Blackstone Watershed Collaborative and their regional partners, Tighe Bond, MassWildlife, and the Sutton Conservation Commission. The purpose of the SNP Network webinar series is to showcase the work of our partners and share out regional case studies and emerging topics and resources relevant to the SNP region. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share this important work with communities across our region. My name is Leah Soloway. I'm the coordinator with the SNP Network located at the New England Environmental Finance Center, and I'll be managing logistics for today's program. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce and provide you all with a little background about the SNP Network and the SNP region. The SNP Network is a technical assistance and training program that is led by the New England Environmental Finance Center, which is a regional technical assistance provider for EPA Region 1. The SNP Network's mission is to empower communities to achieve healthy watersheds, sustainable financing, and long-term climate resilience through the management of stormwater and restoration projects. We focus on building local capacity by providing no-cost trainings, webinars, and hands-on technical assistance to communities across the SNP region. The SNP Network is funded by the Southeast New England Program, or SNP, which is a bi-state initiative of EPA Region 1 that supports clean water, healthy ecosystems, and sustainable communities across Southeast Massachusetts and Rhode Island. If you'd like to learn more, please do visit our website, snpnetwork.org. And before we begin the webinar, there are a few logistics to keep in mind. First, everyone will be on mute to ensure audio quality. And at the end of the webinar, there'll be a Q&A session. You'll be able to ask questions by typing them into the Q&A box on your Zoom control panel. We look forward to answering questions, so please type them in at any time. And this webinar is being recorded, and the recording, along with the associated materials, will be sent after the webinar to the participants, and it'll be available on our website. And on that note, I'd like to hand things over to one of our SNP Network partners, Stephanie Covino, Executive Director of the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative. And she'll take things over from here and introduce our topic for today. Thank you, Stephanie. Now, hand over screen sharing to you.
Thank you so much, Leah. So, as she said, I'm the director of the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative, and we are just sort of the professional nudge, as we like to say, to get everybody together in the room today and share this information. So we like to start all of our webinars and presentations with just an acknowledgement that wherever we are in our watersheds, we're on Indigenous land. So in this area for the Blackstone, that includes the Mashpee Wampanoag, Narragansett Indian Tribe, Nipmuc Nation, and the Pokanoket Nation. And this is the area that we are talking about and that we work in. The Blackstone Watershed works from Worcester to Pawtucket. It spans about 475 square miles and 39 municipalities. The river itself runs 48 miles and drops nearly 450 feet in that span, which is pretty important because we used that change in elevation to dam this river many, many, many times. So there are over 300 dams in our watershed, and there are 21 dams on the main stem of our 48-mile river. So the collaborative itself, we're a small impact network. We have a staff of 3, and we like to think that through collaboration with a lot of other different entities, including the other speakers on this webinar today, we can make a bigger impact than normally 3 people would make. So we do everything from meeting with congressional delegation to hosting paddles and working with municipal officials. And we work on a lot of different topic areas as well, whether that's stewardship, access, connectivity, and increasingly dams. There are, as I said, over 300 dams in our watershed, and we need a lot more information about those. Where are they? How tall are they? Who owns them? What is the sediment like? We've done historic sediment studies and a literature review trying to understand what our sediment quality is. There's a lot of information left to be desired there. We have done trainings and webinars about these different topics. And in 2023, we heard this need of, tell us about dam removal. We're sort of interested. We don't really know where to start. And we held this in-person conference in October 23 at Clark University. which brought together over 100 different practitioners to learn about dams and to learn about how to make decisions around dams as well. We used Emily Vogler's decision support tools there. And we've learned a lot from that as well as we went on. We also work with Mass Econ and Dam Busters as they do additional webinars and trainings and information around dams. And we've gotten to progress into actually getting closer to implementation. So we are working with Tighe Bond through funding from the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program and the state of Massachusetts's Dam and Seawall Program to remove two dams on the Mumford River in Douglas, Massachusetts. They're both significant hazards and in poor condition, and we had touted these as, all right, if they happen, these will be the first dam removals in the Blackstone Watershed's history. And that was in a race with this other dam in Uxbridge, Massachusetts, the Homebrew Dam. You can see it's right behind the water division here, and it's very close to the main stem of the Blackstone River. This is permitted and funded and actually has removal planned in the summer of 2026. And so we were so excited about these projects. And then we went to this EBC dam removal site visit in Sutton, Massachusetts, where I live actually. And I learned about these several dam removals that had happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, these aren't going to be the first ones. It's happened. We've done dam removals in the Blackstone watershed. This needs to be shouted from the rooftops. And so we found out more about the project and we got MassWildlife and Tighe Bond and said, please, please, please tell us about the project. Tell everyone else about it. How did this happen? How did it happen in Sutton? And that's what I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to the people that actually got to make this project work. I'm really just here to be the excited cheerleader about it. So from there, I'll hand it over to Stephen Maddox from MassWildlife.
Thank you, Stephanie and Leah, for that introduction. And I just want to thank you guys for organizing, all the attendees for showing up, and to all the presenters. My name is Stephen Maddox. I'm a fisheries biologist with MassWildlife. I've been there about 9 years. And I'm just going to introduce our agency, and then we're going to hand it over to Tighe Bond to kind of discuss the projects. So Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, or MassWildlife for short, we restore, protect, and manage land for wildlife to thrive and for people to enjoy. And we're under the Department of Fish and Game, along with the DER, Division of Ecological Restoration, Office of Boating Access, and then also Division of Marine Fisheries. Next slide. And a little bit more specifically, our mandate or mission is that we're responsible for the conservation of fish and wildlife for the benefit and enjoyment of the public. So our work is generally always, has the public in mind. And we were actually founded in 1866 in response to concerned citizens about loss of Atlantic salmon due to dams and pollution. So we are very deep rooted in this issue, and I like to remind my supervisor about that whenever a project like this comes up. And we are primarily funded by the sales of fishing and hunting licenses, as well as other funds that come through state or federal programs. Next slide. And our sections within our division, so we have the fishery section, which I'm a part of. We set regulations along with the wildlife section, who sets regulations for things like deer and trapping. We also have a habitat section that primarily focuses on terrestrial habitat on our WMAs, or our wildlife management areas, which we'll talk about in a minute. We do have a land section, which helps acquire all of our land parcels and include our biological priorities for conservation. We have a natural heritage and endangered species section who reviews projects, construction projects, and various things, and they work with endangered species. We also have outreach and education section that does a lot of public facing work. Next slide. So just a few things of what we do, just to give you an idea. This will be brief, but we do a lot of research and monitoring with many species. We do fun things like peregrine falcon conservation and research. We band bald eagles. We track and monitor black bears, and we do a lot of fisheries monitoring, including our very popular trout stocking in the fall and spring. Next slide. We also do outreach and education. We have an angler education program that focuses on kids and families, getting them fishing, which is a great outdoor activity. We have learn to hunt classes. We have teaching with trout, where kids raise native brook trout in their classrooms, and they get to release them at the end of the season. Fly tying classes, and again, a lot of our trout stocking events, we invite the public out, especially school groups, and they really love that. So just some of the things we do. And again, land. So this is a snapshot of some of our lands that we own, our WMAs. I think we own over 200,000 acres across the state. So it's a lot of really cool parcels that I encourage you guys to get out and explore. We're approaching hunting season, so wear orange if you're out there now, but these are great places to go hike and wildlife view, and just kind of take part in nature. Next slide. And some of the things that we do on these WMAs to manage the habitat for these species that we care about. We do prescribed fires. We do invasive plant management work. We do mowing, mulching, and wood product harvest when it's appropriate to recreate lands like grasslands or pine barrens that existed prior to settlement. We do some dam removals and culvert replacements where opportunities arise. And we're hoping to do some strategic wood addition to create really good habitat for fish. And again, I just want to reiterate here, we manage our habitats for species. And these include our state wildlife action plan species, or our SWAP species. They're called our greatest conservation need species. We do this for state listed species, which are rare and need our help. And we also do this for popular game species that has a great public benefit, such as deer, trout, bass, things like that. And this is a map of the dams in Massachusetts. Most of you are probably familiar with the rich history of dams in this state. There's at least over 3,000 dams, it's estimated. Several are flood control dams. Some of them are hydropower that produce at least some amount of energy for public use. We have some water supply dams. And of course, as Stephanie said, you know, some of them have clear ownership and some of them don't. So we own quite a bit of land, as I mentioned, through our WMAs, and we own at least 30 or more dams that happen to be on those WMAs. So as a landowner, we've recently made an effort to try to identify these dams, have inspections on the structures, and kind of figure out what needs to be done in terms of habitat restoration, but also in terms of practical, logistical, being a responsible landowner. Because some of these dams, upon their inspection, are high hazard or in poor condition. So we're trying to really get a hold of this because a lot of these have just been ignored for a long time. And that's kind of where we are today with this WMA. And I think this is where I can turn it over to Dan from Tighe Bond to kind of speak more about this.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's see. So Stephen just gave a background on MassWildlife in general. I want to focus in on the Merrill Ponds, which is an area in Sutton, Massachusetts, in the Blackstone Watershed that MassWildlife owns. I want to talk about the history of the sites and the history of our projects, why these projects got approached in a different way. And then I'm going to turn this over to Dan Hammerberg, who is on my team, to talk about how construction of these projects went. And then we'll have a little bit of a roundtable discussion afterwards. So the Merrill Ponds are on a brook called Singletary Brook. I kind of have two opening slides here because I couldn't decide which one I liked better. But really the focus is like, how do we address these dam issues in a way that makes common sense, that's beneficial, and that, kind of balances restoration and recreation and all these kinds of things. So here's the slide that shows MassWildlife's ownership towards the center of the state, the wildlife management areas. We are focused on this area right here in Sutton, Oxford, and a little bit in Millbury, I think the Merrill Ponds Wildlife Management Area. This is the Blackstone River watershed overall, and we're zooming in on this small corner of it right at the edge. Singletary Brook, it's about a 6.2 mile long brook that flows into the Blackstone River. About half of that length is ponds. It includes 23 stream crossings, 13 dams, and the upper portion of this watershed feeds Lake Singletary, which is a significant recreational resource, a lot of residences, public boat ramp gets a lot of use, pretty popular spot. It's a warm water brook, and within the wildlife management area itself, the stream is 2.6 miles long, but 2 miles of that is ponds. There's 9 stream crossings, or there were a major pipeline crossing, and several rare species present. So that just kind of sets the groundwork for the area. In pre-colonial times, Singletary Brook within the wildlife management area had some boggy low areas. Those were, we think, used for cranberry foraging. The anecdotal reports of that go way back. And in the 1700s, as with many small streams, it got converted to mill use. There were 2 dams present that kind of extended throughout the history of this area, or at least the colonial history and onwards. But then the mills, it was just a small drop, small stream, so they weren't very economically viable. And it later gave over to the Sutton Cranberry Company, that then began like more mass production, packaging, and shipping of cranberries out of this wildlife management area before the Commonwealth bought it. In the 1920s, the Commonwealth came in. Maybe the Cranberry Company went bankrupt. I'm not exactly sure of the story. The Commonwealth saw an opportunity to acquire some property, and they converted these ponds that existed for cranberry purposes into fish hatchery use. So it became the first scientifically monitored warm water fish hatchery in the country. One of the few, because warm water fish, it turns out, really don't need much help from people. It's cold water fish that need help. And this area really wasn't that great for cold water fish rearing. In the 1930s, though, the hatchery expanded during the Depression as part of the Works Project Administration. Some of the older dams were rebuilt, relocated, newer dams were constructed. But then from the 1960s onward, the hatchery operation stopped, and the area gave over to recreation, fishing, some hunting, other pretty narrow parcels along the ponds anyways. And then people retired and sort of got forgotten about to some extent. So here's an overview of the area. The yellow boundary is kind of the property boundary around the wildlife management area. Lake Singletary is to the northeast. You can see it in the corner. And then in the series is these 7 ponds: Welsh Pond, Putnam Pond, Schoolhouse Pond, Adams Pond, Arnold Pond, Town Farm Pond, and Thompson Pond. There'll be a quiz on that later. So I put in a bunch of cool pictures. So this is kind of starting from downstream going upstream. There were fish sorting basins built along the brook where fish would be caught so that they wouldn't make their way out of the wildlife management area. These are still there, these fish sorting basins. These dams were not really that sophisticatedly constructed. They weren't really design drawings. They were rock and earth piled up by people that didn't really know how to build dams. They got built and they failed, and they got rebuilt over the years. But eventually, this is Welsh Pond at the downstream end. Eventually, somebody spent some money, got some concrete, and fixed it more or less correctly. This is Putnam Pond. It was the old grist mill infrastructure that got adapted to fish hatchery use, at least at one point. So these really old stone walls that had sluiceways and flumes and screens added to them for fish catching and moving. We think staff probably lived on site for some periods, particularly during the Depression, to help operate things. This is Putnam Pond again later. Just really cool to look at these photos. We're not even sure where this structure was. It may have failed and been relocated to some other place at one point. This is Schoolhouse Pond, a view of Schoolhouse Pond. That schoolhouse right there in the background, that still exists. You can still visit it. School groups still come and visit that site. I kind of feel like this is the pond that people in town seem to feel most fondly about. And it was one of the impoundments that removed, but by the time we got to it, it was so weedy and shallow that, it just really did not look like this anymore. This is Adams Pond under construction. We think they used the old cranberry carts to do the construction, moving of soil and those kinds of things. It got built and rebuilt, and then people would just go out and collect fish, box them up, ship them out across the state to a different place for stocking. Dan H and I were joking that this truck is probably out in the woods somewhere, worried to be waiting to be found. We haven't found it though, but these dams look pretty good when they were constructed. They did a pretty good job. But 80 whatever years later, I went out and visited this site for the first time in I think 2013, and it was a different story. The dams are covered in trees. Stones are missing off the walls are leaning, falling down. Not really big public safety types of issues, except for there are public roadways on some of these embankments. So the public roadway pieces were getting some limited maintenance, enough to keep things going. But you'd never guess that this was a dam, but this is Putnam Pond Dam, about 12, 13 years ago. With these old fish sorting basins in the woods, railroad rails holding up infrastructure. Like no engineer would stamp a 30-foot span of just a railroad rail supporting stone walls, leaning with trees growing from it. Deteriorated concrete, beaver activity, corrugated metal pipes rusted out on the bottom, concrete just deteriorating and gone. This is Adams Pond Dam. It had overtopped and eroded around the outlet structure before, and then the beaver has been doing their job to fix it up. So things just didn't really look that great. This is Town Farm Pond Dam up at the upstream side with this huge erosion gully just completely eroded out at the dam toe. And then there's good old Thompson Pond Dam, which still looks like this up at the top of the wildlife management area. I've never seen concrete just dissolve like that before, but there's just no way for this dam to even hold water. It was so far gone. So in 2012, 5 significant hazard dam, 2 low hazard dams in the wildlife management area, all in poor condition, 3 of them with public roadways on the crest, used for recreation, definitely used for recreation, but access was not great. There was little parking or parking along the roadside, which is just a kind of a busy road. And, it just like was a situation that needed to be rectified. And you got to remember, in the early 21st century, we'll say, there was not much dam safety work happening statewide before 2005. The state dam safety office did inspections for dam owners, but dams weren't being constructed because it's just really difficult to construct dams, and it has been since the 70s. Tighe Bond, for example, had a significant dam design practice from 1911 through the 1970s, but by 2005, we were down to 2 part-time engineers that just kind of helped out people when they needed it, but mostly did other things. But in 2005, the Winton Pond Dam in Taunton almost failed. 2,000 people were evacuated, and there was a big dam safety regulatory change that led to the Office of Dam Safety really starting to crack down on dam issues in 2006. So with dam safety orders going out, and that's also when the Massachusetts Riverways program, which became DER, started to really start seeing success in dam removals. It became DER in 2009. And you can kind of see the state of the art in dam removals over the decades. There was really not much happening before 2000, then a couple here and there, and it started to really pick up as time went on. So when we, MassWildlife, and we began looking at these projects in 2010, 2012, we were like, oh, what do we think about doing some dam removals here? Because MassWildlife, even though they're a state agency, they had dam safety orders, significant hazard, poor condition dams, you are required by the Office of Dam Safety to do something. What that typically means is start performing follow-up inspections, do a phase 2 inspection evaluation where you do an alternatives analysis, then repair, breach, or remove that dam. And there are fines for non-compliance. They were $100 per day for a while, and then they got increased to $5,000 per day eventually. And just being a state agency like MassWildlife was realizing, hey, there is some risk here. We really need to do something. So let's do something. So here's just a reminder of where the ponds are, where they sit: Welsh Putnam, Schoolhouse, Adams, Arnold, Town Farm, Thompson, going north to south. So what does MassWildlife do? They need to do something. It should be quick. They have dam safety orders outstanding. They need to take care of them. Dam removal is generally not quick. Even now, dam removal is generally not quick. DER was telling me the other day that the average permitting timeline that they see for dam removals is about 600 days now, and it was longer in the 2010s. But dam rehabilitation is really expensive. So just to jump to the conclusion here, Adams Pond Dam, when that construction was completed, it was a rehabilitation. It cost $2.7 million to take care of. The 4 dam removals that MassWildlife has done in this wildlife management area, the total cost for all 4 put together was almost the same as that one rehabilitation, 2.9 dam removals. So we working with MassWildlife help them decide, like, we could buy some time with small repairs to get like some of the most urgent conditions addressed, but we can't buy money. Commonwealth agencies cannot apply for Commonwealth grants. And because of all those obstructions on Singletary Brook, this is just not a good candidate for like federal funding, probably. So let's use the money that MassWildlife gets, and try to design a program around that. And I think I probably told Bill once with the Conservation Commission who's on this meeting, we didn't make these decisions for financial reasons, and that's partly true, but financial reasons drives a heck of a lot of these decision-making processes. Because if we rehabilitated all these dams, we'd still be working on them now, like guaranteed. So we started off with some small repairs. This was 2014. We did some, we cut the trees, we did some embankment work at Adams Pond Dam, and at Town Farm Pond Dam, we did the same. We filled that erosion gully. We took care of an overtopping area. We worked in the snow to get it done. And we did it cheap. We did it quick. Doing repairs like this is way faster than trying to get a dam removed. It's faster than doing a big rehabilitation project where you have to control water, draw down the impoundment. So these were pretty small projects, just with the goal of like getting these dams to last a while longer until we could get around to doing the work properly. So they were like duct tape projects, but duct tape doesn't apply in civil engineering. We use the civil engineers duct tape, which is a riprap. Anyway, while we were doing that, we said, let us develop a master plan. We did not seek the town's input. We did not go develop a coalition of project partners. MassWildlife is like, let us figure out what makes sense for us, what we think people want in the area, and then we will develop that plan and then pitch it, right? And try to get it. So the plan was, let's remove most of the dams. We're not going to worry about Thompson Pond Dam because it's failed, like it's removed already. We will try to return the wildlife management area to that pre-hatchery period with a couple of ponds for recreational use, keep 1 or 2 dams for recreation and habitat. There is an endangered species that's dependent on one of these ponds, and we'll use a dam maintenance capital budget allocation to do the work. We will start permitting, and we will solicit feedback during permitting. And this is how we are going to do it. So it was a top-down type of plan. It was not a bottom-up type of plan. So we developed the plan, we started design, and then we scheduled a public meeting through the MEPA process. We could have attempted to ask for a waiver of a mandatory EIR because with our impact thresholds, we were over, we would have been over an EIR threshold. But typically what we would do for a dam removal project is back then is ask for an EIR waiver. But we're like, this is too big of a project. We would like public input. We will use the MEPA process to get public input that then we will take into account as the project progresses. So we had this meeting. I think on this slide is where sometimes somebody might be tempted to put the torches and pitchforks picture, but that is not how I remember it. I stood up in front of this meeting. There were a lot of residents there with a lot of concerns, and we listened. We tried to listen. We took those concerns, and then we tried to use that information to the project to make the project better. So there were infrastructure concerns. There's 2 private driveways. There's a major gas pipeline. One of the residents in particular had legitimate concerns about changes in flows at his driveway. There were historical concerns. We've already kind of talked about the history of this site and how it's just such a piece of that area of West Sutton. And with that go aesthetic concerns, and these are really scenic roadways in this part of town. Public shade trees, stone walls, those kinds of things. There are also water quality and sediment concerns. Lake Singletary spends a lot of effort trying to manage aquatic invasives and nutrient inputs to Lake Singletary. In a typical dam removal, you're trying to just let the sediment do what the sediment wants, go downstream, and that would be end up in Lake Singletary, right? So really, we're going to come up with a plan to take care of that while trying to assuage their concerns that we think there are ways to manage it where it won't be a problem. There are flooding concerns that came up, recreation concerns, did we look at alternatives? And fire protection concerns. The fire departments in town use these ponds for water for fighting fires in the area, legitimate concerns. But when you take one of these projects and as an example, look at it side by side, removal versus rehabilitate, removal comes out better, honestly, in terms of a lot of the metrics that people in town brought to our attention. Trees to be cut. Well, if we did a rehabilitation, it would be a major civil engineering project. There would be a lot of trees being cut, a long time of roadway disruption. The cost is about double. So this example is just Welsh Pond. This was one of the first one that we permitted with the Conservation Commission, and they asked us to go through this process and look at these alternatives side by side. It was a eutrophic pond as it was, but we could make it a more diverse, shallow marsh floodplain by doing the dam removal. This pond, sure, you could recreate on it, but it was very tight parking along a busy road. So we just, we knew people fish. We saw evidence of that, but we were going to provide that resource in a place where it was safer as another part of the plan. In terms of aesthetics, we had this debate with the Conservation Commission, like people thought it would look good as it was, on our project team, we think dam removals are going to look good. And it was kind of like, trust us, we think you'll like it once it's done. And then from a historical perspective, let's keep stone walls where we can, keep them visible. But if we're doing a dam rehabilitation, then we have to impact those things because we have to reconstruct them properly to modern standards. Flooding is going to be improved both ways. And then from a scenic roadway perspective, we can cut fewer trees and have a smaller change on the landscape by doing these dam removal projects. So here is the plan. At the downstream end, private driveway. Let's give them a new culvert to help them pass more water. For the gas pipeline that crosses the wildlife management area, we'll talk to the pipeline owner. They will pay we worked out so that they would pay to protect it. We would permit it for them, and that took care of it. For Welsh Pond Dam, we replaced 2 roadway culverts and then left a low area in where the pond was so that sediment coming down from the future projects could accumulate. Schoolhouse Pond Dam was kind of removed already, but we daylit 90 feet of stream there, and we kept hatchery era structure, including some of the stone walls from the grist mill that were like very old in place. And Schoolhouse Pond Dam, that would have been the major source of sediment migrating downstream through the system. That was hard to do. We had planned that it would get captured in Welsh Pond Dam in that low area that we left. But then in response to concerns from the town, we ended up excavating a pilot channel before we did the dam removal and moving the sediment to the side so there wouldn't be quite so much erosion and downstream migration. Adams Pond Dam, that's our rehabilitation. Let's give them some parking spaces, make it a nice recreational resource, a little boat ramp, some fishing platforms, and we'll put in a dry hydrant for the fire department. Arnold Pond Dam, we will take a pedestrian bridge to provide access for this historical cemetery that's the only way to access it was across the dam crest. And then Town Farm Pond Dam, we repaired that in 2014. It still looks pretty good. We're just not going to plan on doing anything with that right now. It's going to last. Thompson Pond Dam doesn't need anything. And from a scenic roadway perspective, we will use powder-coated brown guardrails. We will mitigate the shade tree loss as the town asks, and then reuse on-site stone where possible. Of course, the town is only seeing these one project at a time, right? As we apply for different permits for the project. And it's just like, we were dependent on the town's trust that we were building through the first couple of projects. So that was the plan. Eventually, we were able to get permits to get started. And now Dan Hammerberg is going to talk about how construction went on these.
So now we're on to the construction portion of the presentation. So like Dan was saying, we were working from downstream to upstream so that we were reducing risk as we moved upstream. We were creating places for that sediment to migrate to so that it wasn't ending up in Lake Singletary. This was the first concern, first downstream concern, right? Was this private driveway did not have capacity for the stream flows that we were going to increase by taking out the dams upstream. So this is a culvert replaced by Sumco in 2018. Instead of replacing their culvert, we just added capacity for these larger storm events. Next slide, Dan. So the next year with 2019 was the Welsh Pond drawdown and dam removal. So here we're using the culvert that we built to the side so that we were not gonna undercut the existing culvert since we weren't sure how it was designed. Next slide, Dan. So, and then before we could tackle the culverts downstream at Welsh Pond, we had to install some stream barriers to prevent undercutting of the gas main. So the gas company did their own protection, stream protection with articulated concrete blocks, but we decided to add some more riprap within the stream, just under the stream bed material, to make sure that during these high storm flows, we weren't going to damage the pretty sizable gas transmission mains. Next slide, Dan. And so here's what these culverts look like along Lake Singletary. So they don't meet stream crossing standards. They're 6 foot by 6 foot. That was intentional so that we could slow storm flows going down this system before it hits Lake Singletary. So we're using this expansive floodplain that we've created by the dam removals and creating these giant sponges. Next slide, Dan. So just upstream of Welsh Pond culverts, right? We have riverstone, rounded riverstone in the center of the stream, riprap along the sides to stabilize the slopes, and a rock weir upstream and downstream of these culverts to make sure that there isn't head cutting or erosion that would wash out these culverts. And this is Welsh Pond here. So next slide, Dan, you could flip through these. So pay attention to those trees there on the top right-hand corner. So this is Welsh Pond before drawdown in 2017, and this is just after the dam was removed in 2019. That green you're seeing is aquatic vegetation. Next slide, Dan. Watching those trees there. This is just 1 year after dam removal. So we intentionally kept the culvert high to provide some open water. That was a request from the town. So we left about 1 to 2 feet of grade so that we could fill in this wetland. Next slide, Dan. That stone wall was a surprise.
I love the stone walls when they appeared.
So 2021 here. Next slide. We got more grass growth coming up. This wetland is really filling in. And then I believe the next slide is 2023. So just more growth. And then we'll have a different view on the next slide from West Sutton Road looking out in 2023 towards Welsh Pond. And that's that powder coated brown guardrail that you'll see at a couple other of these projects due to this scenic roadway requirements. Next slide, Dan. So now we're in 2020. We've moved on upstream to Putnam Pond Dam. Just downstream to the left of the photo, there's Welsh Pond. And then that's West Sutton Road there. And then just over to the right is the inlet to the to the Welsh Pond culvert. And then working our way upstream down towards the bottom of the photo, we have the grade control structures that MassWildlife installed to protect that gas main, and that gas company installed to protect that gas main. And then the edge of the excavation there that disturbed soil, that's where the stream started to be daylighted. Those are those old railroad ties or those old railroad rails that Dan was pointing out earlier. And then just to the right there, that's a fish sorting basin. We go to the next slide. So here's Putnam under construction. So yes, it's less expensive than a dam rehab, but it's still a pretty major excavation effort to do this work. So here's bottom of the stream as we're getting ready to put in that 6x6 precast culvert. You can see the fish sorting basin over to the left there. Next slide. So here's looking upstream. We have the rock weirs controlling grade just downstream of the Putnam Pond Dam culvert, and the stone wall there over to the left. This is probably a 2-year storm event. Dan, next slide. So now we're fast forwarding to 2023. Originally, the plan was to go to Schoolhouse Pond Dam, but due to concerns about sending sediment downstream, we did some redesign of that stream to create a pilot channel and moved on to Adams Pond Dam to do the rehabilitation. So that's sheeting. That's a temporary cofferdam installed to construct the spillway and the precast culvert. And so we had to hold that water level throughout construction. Here's the temporary spillway that the contractor created. It's a riprap channel that maintained that flow during phase 1 of construction. Next slide, Dan. So I like this photo. This is a couple steps into the process, but it just shows you how much work goes into creating these massive concrete structures, right? So what we're doing here is we're pouring that base slab for the culvert to the precast culvert to sit on top of. So you've got the general contractor, you've got the concrete subcontractor, vibrating, working the concrete, finishing the concrete. You have the pump truck operators out there, and then you have the concrete distributor there watching installation. Next slide. So here's how the training walls attach to the precast culvert. So the precast culvert's on the right side of the screen, and then the training walls are just down on the downstream side. Next slide, Dan. So here's looking upstream. The phase 1 is coming to completion. We're looking at the precast culvert and the cast in place training walls. Next slide. And here's our first storm coming through over the spillway, which is just absolutely thrilling after almost 6 months of work. Next slide, Dan. So we're on to phase 2. It's in 2024. This dam had to be broken up into 2 years because it was so expensive. So phase 2, we had the permanent sheets installed. We had riprap upstream and downstream. That cofferdam there was more expensive than the sheeting because it was so long in length. Next slide. And then here is Adams Pond Dam rehabilitated before the guardrails went in, and that car top boat ramp access is over to the right there. So increased parking, increased access for the public, but while bringing the dam up to today's standards. So next slide, Dan.
We need to fly, Dan.
Yeah, we got to fly. So Schoolhouse Pond Dam and Arnold Pond Dam, those are the two that were done in 2025. So here's 8 Lots Road. Next slide. So the culvert is going through the road here. This was that pilot channel that I had talked about that we had to construct. Sediment was cast to the side in these piles to create upland area for wildlife, while also not having to haul it off site, while also limiting the amount of sediment that was going to go downstream. Next slide, Dan.
Amphibious excavators are the coolest thing in the planet, by the way.
Very popular in Louisiana. So that was done by Sumco Engineering. So they are installing the footing for the culvert there, installing the culvert. Here they're putting in some stream bed mixed material. Again, these don't meet stream crossing standards, but we're still kind of building up a stream in there and making sure it's not going to get washed out. So we almost removed this because it looks so turbid, but the point is that dam removals do cause turbidity, right? You just can't get around that. So we had 2 turbidity curtains downstream, but we were also designing this project from downstream to upstream so that these ponds and impoundments were going to collect that sediment. Next slide there. Looking out towards Adams, this is that final product. There's that powder coated guardrail because 8 Lots Road is scenic byway there. Next slide, Dan. So here's the final dam that we're going to talk about today, Arnold Pond Dam. This was just finished this fall. So here's the dam cleared of trees, about 14 feet high. It's one of the bigger ones of the system. Next slide, Dan. And here's construction. We've got 2 different groups of contractors going. So general contractor is excavating the stream through the embankment. or excavating the breach to the embankment. The concrete contractor is working on framing up the abutments and placing rebar. Next slide, Dan. So here's the bridge. So abutments are in. Stone has been reused from the stone walls in and around the abutments. We were able to save three of the stone walls that were existing. They had to be rebuilt a little bit, but here they go, going to place that bridge. So high stress, but very, very, very exciting. Next slide, Dan. So here's increased parking. That was one of the requests from MassWildlife. Previously, it was parking on a very sloped, steep hill, so you had to accelerate to get up onto West Sutton Road, which was risky and not ideal. So here we have spaces for 5 cars parked perpendicular to the road. And then next slide, Dan. So this brings us to the end here. Here's the bridge. Here's partial restoration. Trees are planted, and we're just waiting for seed to take off next season. So thank you. Take it over, Dan.
Yeah, so
Steph?
sure, it sure is something to have these projects done after, what, 12, 13 years of working on them. But, hopefully the town likes it. Hopefully the users like it, right? Because that's what it's all about.
So that's a perfect transition. And thank you both for that background. That was so helpful to just kind of break it down and go through. So Bill, if you want to introduce yourself and then maybe just speak a little bit as to what the town's primary concerns were in the beginning and how is that addressed over time?
Perfect. Thank you. Well, everybody, I'm Bill Wentz. I'm the current chair of Sutton Conservation, and I was involved as either a chair, a board member, or a vice chair through this entire process. And I think at the end of the day, the town's consultant, and Tighe Bond and all the contractors, everyone really worked out well. And I will say at the end of the day, the project came out great. It went smooth. It looks good. And that was probably the biggest concern. So one of the questions is what is the biggest concern? And Dan hit on a lot of those things. Aesthetics is a huge thing. One of the other things was regular townspeople come in and say, if this was in my backyard, I couldn't do it. How come the state can do it? So we had to ask all those questions and say, if money wasn't an object, right? If everything was free, why wouldn't we do this? And there was a lot of pushback to have the dams rebuilt. I don't remember if it was all of them, but a handful. Let's rebuild the dams. That's, as conservation would say, that's not our problem what it costs. Those are big things. I think one of the big concerns for me was I'm in the insurance business, so I did not want to not have a water source. I don't remember if it was me that brought it up or the fire department, but we worked well together to put the pipe essentially to draw water out of what's there now to make sure that residents of the town and surrounding areas are protected. That was a big thing. Of course, aesthetics, wildlife, the birds, the fish, people thought they were just gonna never come back. It's very hard to explain that to people when they can't see what you folks just showed us a few minutes ago with the finished product. So those are the biggest things. And then recreational concerns, people were concerned, can we still fish? Are we still going to be able to fish? Are we going to be able to hike? And I do think the final outcome is better than what it was X amount of years ago. It's amazing how long this project has been going, right? It's a big project, but I drive by quite a bit living in town. I'm a lifelong Sutton resident, and I do drive by it and I see people fishing. I see people on the water. I've personally gone through there and hiked. The bridge is cool. So it really did a nice job of letting people still use it. We mentioned aesthetics. The aesthetics is huge. And probably one of the biggest things is people don't like change. Even if they say they're okay with change, people don't like change. That was always the fish hatcheries. That was never mentioned as dams or ponds. As when I was growing up, that was the fish hatcheries. I fished there, we hung out there, we played there, and people still do. So to see someone come in, hey, we're going to change this without seeing the final project, what it could be. So the slides that were just shown would be great to show to other towns, because any other place you do this is probably going to have some of the very same or similar or exact questions, right? And overall, I think the project came out great, and it's nice to see it done. And I will say, I do remember one of the working on the dam schedule changed. And you folks reaching out to our town consultant saying, hey, we're going to move something. It was like, yeah, do whatever they need to do. We've had no problems. This is working smooth. So that's really nice when everyone can work together and get a good outcome. Because when that doesn't happen, it's a nightmare for everybody. So
I didn't realize I'd had such a good plant on this webinar, because that's exactly what we're hoping to do, is to sort of share and showcase this story so that other towns can be a little bit less scared when they go into it. Because as we've said, no one else has done this, right? Uxbridge is working on it right now. They're about to go through it next summer, but no other town in the Blackstone watershed has seen these dam removals.
well,
So
I think, Stephanie, that's funny you mentioned that, because I think that might have been one of our comments. Like, why do you have to start with us? Can't you go somewhere else first? And then, and Stephanie said, are there any pictures or anything you want to share? And I was like, not really, because I knew everything that you folks were sharing is going to be the before and after. And I will say, some of the most coolest, I did not see some of those original pictures when they were really being built. Like, that's beauty. But then to uncover stone walls that we didn't know were there, that's what it's all about.
yeah, thanks. One thing that I think is really a really small but unique aspect of this project, if you guys want to discuss a bit, is the cemetery access. Can you talk about that? Either Bill or Dan?
Oh,
I've been to it. So I actually kind of knew it was there, but forgot about it and went for a hike. Oh, it's a while ago now. And then we kind of, my wife and kids and I just stumbled upon it, and it was really, really neat. So I knew it was there, but completely forgot. But it's history that's didn't go anywhere, which
Yeah.
I think was good. Yeah.
yeah. So Arnold, so the dam crests for Welsh Pond and Putnam Pond and Schoolhouse Pond, they all had town roads on them, right? And it's like back in the before the 1930s or whatever, like property ownership was pretty flexible when it came to town roads and Commonwealth of Mass properties and all these sorts of things. And Arnold Pond, which is the one with the now it has a bridge to go over this historical cemetery. I think it probably was a road that was used by people in town to access different areas that just kind of like stopped being used and got forgotten about. But there was an old, I think it's a town cemetery, or at least just a cemetery where the ownership was just like, who knows who owns this, that ended up on state property. And then people stopped using the road, but it's still there, right? The when we started these projects, I think Joyce Smith was the Concom chair. I remember her saying that she's a family in town that goes back generations, and she had family buried in that cemetery. So it was very important to keep that access available. So this was having that access. Maybe people know more about the presence of that cemetery now. There's some some neat looking gravestones in there, and the bridge that we put in does allow for a very a very light vehicle access over it, in case anybody like decides at some point that they want to do some restoration up there. So I don't know if you knew that, Bill, but
I didn't, but I will
Yeah.
tell you, the Historical Society is very involved in repairing and rebuilding actually the old cemeteries. They're taking the granite and backing them, so trying to make them bring them back to what they were. So that one is probably on the list, and I didn't realize you could drive over it. So I
Yeah.
guess if you guys want to bury me there after this, that's
Yeah, it's just one of those other aspects that, the thing that people do always ask about dam removals is, I don't want a mud flat for my backyard. What will it look like, right? And we can start to answer that question with some of these examples. But some of the things that you don't always think about are, okay, I need access to my family's cemetery plot that happens to be across this dam. So there are all of these different things for you to juggle, and I just commend you all for coming together and making all of these projects happen. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to public Q&A, and we've gotten a few in the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in there. One was about, do you have to assess flooding for all dam removals at the beginning of the project in order to understand how flooding would change with each dam removal?
I would say yes, that part of doing any dam removal is doing hydrology and hydraulics to figure out what the impact of the dam removal would be. There's a number of standard standard points, standard performance standards for an ecological restoration dam removal project in the Wetlands Protection Act, and looking at.
Sorry.
Oh.
If I can interrupt you for a second, one of the other questions was this an ecological restoration order of conditions or a limited project?
So yes, it's appropriate to look at flooding. You kind of have to look at flooding. A lot of these were permitted before, or actually no, around the time that ecological restoration projects started to become a thing. I think that was like 2016. So it was like right around when we were permitting these projects. But since we were not meeting stream crossing standards necessarily with the culverts and kind of making some of these compromises, I think we did ecological restoration limited projects instead of full ecological restoration projects with restoration orders of conditions.
And maybe just a clarification, did you have to consider flooding at each dam removal individually, or could you model it in the beginning of, we know we're going to remove all of these, so let's just look at that scenario?
We did a master plan at the beginning where we basically, when we came up with the plan, we modeled that entire thing so that then we knew, what the plan was, what the impact of every step in the process would be. We saw that resident with the downstream driveway culvert, that culvert could not pass like a 10-year storm, I think, but with the dam removals, it would flood out the driveway for like smaller than a 5-year storm, right? So that was a concern, and we looked at the project holistically as to those impacts. That made that told us, yes, we need to do something here. But when it came to Lake Singletary, the way that things worked out, we're actually reducing downstream flows for smaller storms because now we don't have all these dam embankments overtopping. Or for larger storms, we're reducing downstream flows for larger storms by sizing these culverts a little bit smaller and doing all these things. So these were all things that we figured out at the beginning of the project. And I guess I would say if anybody else is trying to plan out a multi-dam removal infrastructure replacement master plan like this, starting out with hydrology and hydraulics at the very beginning is pretty important.
And that leads me to another question of, if it was so cost effective to remove the dams, why weren't other dams removed, and could they not have had a fish ladder type overspill to facilitate wildlife passage?
So we kept Adams Pond Dam as a recreational benefit for the town. Because there are so many obstructions on Singletary Brook, we just didn't really see a future where we were going to get great fish passage all the way up. There probably maybe fish present would have used a fish ladder, but the warm water fish are kind of, as Stephen Maddox could add point. The warm water fish are kind of happy like just hanging out in whatever warm water pond they have. They don't really migrate that much as far as I understand. So getting the recreational benefit for those warm water fishing and paddling that residents really liked was, and are looking for, was something that we wanted to do in this project, just because the benefits for doing a complete stream restoration just didn't really seem like they were there in this case.
Can you speak to what kind of plans there are for monitoring impact on water quality, habitat change, et cetera, after these dam removals?
Yep. So we are doing 2-year monitoring for each dam removal in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, looking for how the wetlands change, if sediment's doing what we think sediment is going to do. So far it all has. The one thing that I like that the Conservation Commission did through these projects is give an in perpetuity condition to MassWildlife to allow for the maintenance of invasive species in perpetuity. So that's an in perpetuity condition. When we do certificates of compliance, that's going to stay there so that MassWildlife, because their mission is habitat restoration and management, so that they can come in and keep maintaining these areas free of invasive plants to the extent that they can. And then Lake Singletary has the Lake Singletary Association has their own long-standing water quality monitoring program in the watershed. So they've been we couldn't make any commitments about nutrients and those kinds of things heading down to Lake Singletary, but they are monitoring things and in terms of what the impact might be.
Thanks. We had two folks asking about the cost difference between the brown guardrails for the scenic byway versus standard guardrails.
So that was my one regret. Those brown guardrails are insanely expensive. It turns out they are insanely expensive, and they need to be handled with kid gloves. The town gave us the option of wooden guardrails versus metal guardrails, powder coated guardrails, and we were like, well, we'll do powder coated. That has to be cheaper. B, everybody's approved those. With wooden guardrails, like there's a Connecticut DOT detail that people use, but it's like, I don't know if that's going to be accepted, in Massachusetts. But it turns out that, the wood guardrails are like 5 times as much as a normal guardrail, and the powder coated brown is like 10 or 15 times as much or something like that. Like I don't know what percentage of the project cost of those guardrails, but it's not, it would register.
As a friendly note, that was not the requirement of conservation. I think that's planning board and scenic roads, but I had no idea that the cost was too many couldn't just paint the old ones.
Yeah, well, before it was just the concrete posts that turn into dust when a car hits them, right? So
our
yes.
planning director for Sutton says, told you that you should have done wood. So maybe that was an option of working together a little on that.
It's possible that the powder coated ones were cheaper when we started and became more expensive by the end.
I know we're at time. We had 2 other quick questions maybe we could add in, or do you want us to wrap up, Leah?
We can add them in. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quick question. Did you have to work through the FEMA no-rise floodplain map review process?
This was not an area with a detailed study, so we did get a condition in an Army Corps permit that we had to provide Army Corps with the Army Corps said we had to provide FEMA with information about flood level changes, but I think FEMA was remapping the whole area at that time anyway, so we gave them information and never heard anything back. So I think we were fine.
Perfect.
Yes.
Easy one. And the last question was there any engagement or input specifically with Indigenous peoples of the area about their history and cultural connection to this location?
We did the standard notification of tribal historical preservation officers during the historical review, section 106, and the MEPA process, and I don't believe we heard back. So yes, if there probably is a lot of information out there that but we didn't do specific coordination in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. I'm so happy that this is recorded so that we can go back to it and share with people about this sort of scary opportunity that Sutton had and jumped in and was able to work together with MassWildlife and Tighe Bond and all the other contractors that Dan Hammerberg noted. It really takes a village to make this happen. So kudos, congratulations on the first dam removals in the Blackstone Watershed, and we hope to move forward and do a lot more from here.
That we know of.
And we'll put these in American Rivers. We're going to write a case study. We're going to write an article. You will hear more about these dam removals.
Yeah, I want to echo Stephanie's thanks to all the presenters, and I want to thank all the participants for attending today. Really appreciate you guys coming to this webinar, and we will follow up with the recording in an email that I'll send within the next week. And feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll provide our contact information in the follow-up email. And yeah, with that, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much. And
thank you, everybody. Have a great day.